training becomes a solution for every problem. So I'm not surprised by that response in terms of ticking the box. The third question, I can see the first item to go off the budget was training. This was expected. However, I don't believe that it is the right response from organization. I guess also based on the size of the organization, it would make sense for smaller organizations to cut that budget because they're trying to use up all the money that they had for what they call unnecessary things. So I feel that most organizations feel that, it's not necessary. It can be packed. It can be done later. Let people do their jobs. I would guess that then the 25% of companies who have not slashed their budgets are larger organizations that have learning and development teams, departments, or it is a big factor within the organization, and also for organizations that have heads of learning sitting at the table with the directors or their excos. Question number 4, I can see my department can account for every coin spent in learning and development. I'm actually able to see the amount X spent brought Y change in performance. This is at 50%. This is quite a surprise, Martin, I must say, because
I'm also shocked.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised because most of the time you find, especially in Africa, we have an issue with evaluating training and being able to look at the ROI or the return on investment on training. So for me to see 50%, I'm quite curious. I'm like, I wonder who these are, because then it means that 50% is doing something very right. To be able to see that if we do training X, we will be able to reap certain benefits. My first guess would be maybe in a sales training type role, because that is very easy to evaluate. You take someone for training, train them on how to sell, they go out and sell, they come back, and you're able after 6 weeks to a 90-day period to see a shift in your sales numbers or in your performance as an organization. So that makes me very curious. The next question is, what are you talking about? I have a budget, I just need spend an account on amounts used. That's it. Those others are not ours. That's an interesting question, Martin. I don't know how you came up with that one. And I can see only maybe one person responded. Is that how you're picking up that data, Martin?
Sorry?
The 5%.
It's from the 42 who are taking that poll. So we had about 26 people take. So it's about maybe 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. That's a loophole for a lot of corruption, first of all, I must say, in this country. But number 2, the fact that then there's no limelight or focus on what people are learning or how people are growing, I'd say that's quite dangerous. So I'm also not surprised at that 5%. And then for our number 5 question, how do you decide what learning programs to be undertaken in your organization? So the first response, which we have 30%, an employee comes with course details of a course they desire to attend. If it looks good and we can afford it, we send them. That is the absolute wrong approach to take in terms of learning, because people will pick any training, and if it looks good and we have the money, then you spend money. It doesn't justify what the organization will benefit from sending a person into training. It means we are not really looking at what's the value for the organization. Because in my experience, you'll find that if people pick their own trainings, they're likely to pick things that will not grow them in the role they are currently sitting in. Which means I'm sitting, for example, let's take the example of a bank. I am sitting in a customer service role, but in the future, I would like to go maybe to the treasury department. And therefore, I request for a training in treasury. In regards to training, if you learn something today, the likelihood of you forgetting that training if you don't apply the knowledge is very high. And so therefore, an organization is really wasting money training people on things they are not working on or doing that will not immediately grow them or add value to the strategy of the organization. And therefore, it is a waste. That money could have been used elsewhere to train people or to take people through a learning program that has a direct impact on their work. I like the 70% where it says an employee comes with a course they have seen. We rationalize if that course closes competencies lacking in employee and participating in the course will improve their performance. That's excellent. If that is the trend across board, then it's a good thing, because then you're saying learning has direct impact on performance. We're saying that you are increasing the capability of your staff or your employees in a particular function or in a particular team to undertake or to be able to carry out their duties at the highest or best possible performance. Then lastly, I can see question 6. Learning is, in organization, learning is mostly sourced from external consultants. We have 35%. Then we have a team of internal instructional designers and subject matter experts who develop learning solutions to address competency gaps. That's at 45%. Then we have internal experts. They communicate their knowledge to those who need to be trained. And the question is, that's training. That's 10%. And then the last one, again, at 10%, we learn at our own cost and sources, everyone for themselves and God for us all. Well, that's unfortunate. Now, in terms of the 45%, I like that it's the highest one, that we do actually have teams that are set up to look at learning and development, to look at employee growth, because this, number one, has a direct impact on engagement of employees, which means their productivity will generally be higher. And it also means that you will see direct return on investment, because there's rationale in terms of what are we picking or what are we training our teams? Yeah, what are we focusing on? Maybe for the year, if a company has a strategic plan for 1 year or for 5 or 3 years, then your learning should be directed towards, is this learning that we're doing going to sustain the organization? Is it going to help us meet our strategic goals? And lastly, are our colleagues or our staff members going to grow in their careers based on the programs that we take them through? Thank you, Martin.
You're welcome very much, Siri. Now, there's a question from the audience. What is a learning organization?
For me, I would say a learning organization is an organization that takes or has a focus on learning in terms of what are our employees learning? How are they growing? Yeah, where do we place learning within the organization? Is learning part of the strategy? So when you look at organizational strategies, a quick way to figure out whether this is a learning organization, you will find that learning is part of the strategy. People are part of their strategy, because an organization is run by people. You may have your leadership, you may have your mid-level management, and then you have the masses. And this is your engine. These are the people who run the engine. And so if you have a focus on learning and development, talent development, and there's a team that takes care of that aspect, and it is aligned to your strategy, in my opinion, I would call that a learning organization, Martin.
Okay, so quick question to the audience, and thank you very much, Syria. Quick question to the audience. I am seeing someone here very interesting. Who is reading a book currently? Who is reading a book? You have a book you're reading? If you have a book that you're reading, kindly type a yes. If you have no book you're reading this month or last month, type a no. You have a book you're reading, you don't have a book you're reading, an N. I think I saw textbook in the house. You can see where your potential, whether people are reading or they're not reading. Okay, see, there's a nice, interesting question. We'll come to that. Okay, so we are people who are reading. But let me ask Siri another simple question. Is learning equal to training?
That's how would I answer that question? Is learning equal to training? Yes and no. Yes, because a lot of the learning that gets done is through training, and no, because in our current space, we are aware that learning is split into 70-20-10, which means majority of your learning will be done on the job, will be done through secondments and attachments, will be done through e-learning. It's a balance. And so training forms part of the learning. So I wouldn't say that learning is not training, because it is, but I would say that learning is broader than just training, because then you have different aspects, different ways of learning. People learn by observation, people learn by experience, people learn through reading, as you have just asked, because I can pick up a book and learn a new skill through reading a book. And so learning is very expansive, very wide as compared to just say training, because training then means I go into a class, I sit and I learn a particular skill, whereas learning happens through a wide array of ways and experiences and forms. So that's how I would answer that question, Martin.
Just before we get into the real matter of this, something interesting you've mentioned, the 10, 70, 20. Mm-hmm. Now, and I think I see this. People go for training, which is the 10%,
yes,
which leaves the other 90% is still from the training that they went. They have another 90% which they can learn on the job through informal, but we sometimes tend to think the training is the end. How can an organization take care of that?
I believe it would need an organization to really look at, number one, something we are getting into, which is budgets. Because if you talk about, for example, on the job training, it's not going to cost you any money. It will probably cost you time, and time can be arranged in an array of ways. So an organization would look at budgets to say, okay, this 90% of learning, how do we work around it? So our focus needs to be on what do we need to do for the people? What are the people saying? So an organization could decide to take a survey and say, what are people really looking to learn? I was reading something on the CIPD portal that was talking about the way we communicate, or the channels that we have open for employees to talk to us as the employer, or as HR, or as learning and development. And it would be good to listen to what people are saying. Most employees, you find, are feeling stuck where they are. And so looking at experience rather than taking people for training, because I can tell you for free, it's absolutely impossible to say everybody will be trained this year in 1, 2, 3 things. And so an organization needs to focus and say, this 90%, which is not training or classroom based, what is it going to consist of? And it could consist of organizing for a certain level or a certain function or a certain team to say, this number of people will go for attachments in other organizations. Or you could say, we have secondment opportunities that people can apply for, or be attached to an expert to learn a skill. A trend that's coming up, for example, in Europe is where you have a skilled person, for example, an engineer getting a protege. And so you're not learning in the classroom, you are learning from experience, from doing the job. You know how when we are young children, maybe you have a father who's a mechanic or an engineer or a carpenter, you are told, hold on to this spanner, hold on to this axe, hold on to this, and you get to learn through experience. So in the same way, organizations can decide, we have a marketing expert who maybe can take on 2, 3 people, And it's also a way to look at who is your talent, because you might find that you have somebody sitting in a very wrong department aligned to what their key strengths are. And the minute you pluck that person out of an operations desk and put them in a marketing desk, magic happens. And so I think it's generally around the focus that you have on your people, listening to your people, and looking at what else can we do? What other experience can we give to employees that is not based on a training need, but is based on what do these people need to grow and to find a good experience in terms of being an employee of the organization, Martin.
Okay. Thank you very much. So now, see, before we come back, a question to the audience as we are getting to the real element of it. Our topic today is learning and development, managing your learning budget in crisis time. Let's start from this point. Do you have a training budget currently? Y for yes, N for no, so that we know what we are actually managing. We might be managing a budget that went, okay? That we still have a training, a learning budget. Okay, okay. So there's some no's and there's some yes. Okay, yes, no. Okay, we'll take that it was reduced. But under COVID, it has been chopped. We're talking about COVID came in, finance guys went and said, wait a minute, we need to look at this budget again. And what do we not need? These are the things you're cutting. So you are left either with a budget or you are left with a minimal budget. Okay, so thank you for your response. Now, as we are getting to how do we manage a budget, a learning budget in this crisis time series, how can organizations, before we get to the question, to the audience, I'd like us to compare that between before COVID and now, right now during this COVID time, your people have more learning to do than previously. In terms of they have to learn new things to do, new ways to do things, new ways of thinking. So I know that it's previously they were learning much more. Yeah, and why? For yes, they're learning more now. So pre-COVID, and the current situation, we have more learning now. That's a yes, and I know there's not much learning happening now. Okay, so as we take this poll, my thinking this morning was, during this time of COVID is when actually we need, organizations need their employees to learn more. And then what happens, first budget item to go is usually training budget. So how do we handle? So if you had X amount, you nearly now find that you have 25% that is left for you to achieve what you need. And it is now at the point that there is more learning that is required. Yeah. Siri, how can organizations or how can HR fully utilize the reduced learning budgets and make the most out of it when it is actually the highest needed item in the time?
All right, that's a good question and the meat of what we are discussing today. In my view, number one, yes, I agree with you that most budgets have been slashed. The first thing I would think about as an organization is the infrastructure. What do we have at our disposal? What can we use? You find that large organizations will already have the infrastructure to have online meetings. And if they didn't, then they have invested in an online platform that they can use. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we had a lot of issues with Zoom, which I think they have rectified. So organizations have adapted to using different platforms to have their meetings or to have their learning happening. So a key question to ask yourself as an organization is, what infrastructure do we have? Are we going to do mobile learning? Are we going to do Zoom learning? Are we going to do Google Meet, and the various other platforms that we have. Number two, the question is how wide or how large is the organization? And where are our people working? If they're working from home, if they're working remotely, where are people concentrated on or concentrated in terms of our organization? Why I ask this is because you'll find organizations, for example, in Kenya, you find you have branches or you have offices or networks all over the country. Is your internet functionality okay for you to say, okay, this is how we are going to learn? So that's number one, your infrastructure. Number two would then be, as I mentioned, where are people situated? Is the organization one that requires people to come into the office? And if they're coming into the office, then you know most trainings have been scrapped in terms of face-to-face. You can't attend a face-to-face session because it's a gathering. And so therefore this has been banned by directive from different governments. And so you find if people are coming to the office, people will be coming in shifts because you want to reduce the number of people in the organization. So day one, you have this group of people, or week one, you have this group of people, week two, you have a different group of people. So you would have to think about that as an organization. Number three, you would then need to think, what do these people need? Of course, people are chasing numbers. Business and economy is interrupted greatly. I can tell you, anyone you speak to is telling you everything is slow. And so an organization would ask themselves, why then should we focus on training? Or why should we focus on learning? Yet your people need to learn at this time. You will find that in the research that I've done over the years, especially Africans, we are communal type of, our culture is communal in terms of we like to engage with each other. And so over the longest time, we had a really hard time getting people to learn online. We had a really hard time getting people to embrace learning online. What has COVID done for us now? It has made everybody switch to the digital space. It is a requirement now because you cannot go for your face-to-face learning. You cannot go for your engagements to be able to interact with other people. And so the fact that we have quickly, or the disruption that has happened is that we have quickly shifted into this platform. People therefore need to learn. Most people have no clue how to use Zoom or go on Google Meets or whatever. So an organization needs to know what kind of people or what age group of people do we have in the organization. If you have an older generation and they need to adapt to this system, then they need to learn. You see, that's also a learning. You quickly need to teach people to learn how to use whatever platform that is coming into your organization, or whatever platform you're going to use. Number two, if we have a very young generation, they're always on their phone. They have gadgets. So they quickly adapt to the system that you are implementing or that is now a requirement. So that's a key area I would say organizations need to think about. The first learning is, can people use these platforms? Number three, I think wellness is a huge area to think around for organizations in terms of this little budget that we now have left. What are we doing with it? Are people okay? People have been sent on leave. You had not planned to go on leave in the first half of the month. People have been sent on unpaid leave where it's necessary. People are becoming redundant. And so it is very important for organizations to think, how are our people doing? Are we taking care of their wellness? Are we talking about their mental statuses? And it doesn't mean everybody will be affected the same way, but it's important for an organization to see within this budget, how much of it are we looking at people's wellness? Are people okay? You're working from home, you have kids to take care of, kids are not in school, you have work to do. I can give you an example of a friend of mine who texts me or responds to my texts past 11 p.m. Why? Because she has a family to run, she has kids in the house, and she has to work full day. So you have to deliver your KPIs, you have to deliver your work on a daily basis. And that pressure, for any individual is high. So organizations must really concentrate or have a focus on wellness of their employees. Are people doing okay? What programs or what information? Sometimes it's about passing information. What information can we pass to our employees through these platforms that will help balance them out? That will help them know that we care as an organization, that we are concerned about your well-being. How are you doing? Yeah, then another key area I would focus those budgets on is around competencies. You find that there's some people with hidden skills that are sitting in your organizations, and these skills maybe have appeared today. They have
You
come up.
use your iPad, it will go off. You'll not be able to do TikTok when your guest comes.
Okay,
Can you put it back to church?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sort it out. Sorry.
Sorry for that interruption.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I was saying was you will find that people have hidden skills. So maybe someone had a real skill in terms of digital instructional design, maybe something they did, in their pastime, or you have people who come up as illustrators. Remember, you're trying to figure out any way that you can pass information to your organization or to your employees. I'll give an example of an illustrator. I have a client who needs to do training for which industry is this? For building and construction. And the material that they create is both the technician and the person receiving the product, they both need to know this information, because you'll send out your technician, they get to the client, and the client needs to know what is being done at my house or at my organization. And so the illustrator in that organization has come up as a key person, because they're able to translate the information that is technical, to simplify it through diagrams, to simplify it through pictures, so that the end user, who is your customer, is able to use that information and to get their product correctly. And so organizations need to look at these people who have these skills that are hidden, that are popping up now during this pandemic. What can we do for them? Can we take them through specialized training to upgrade them? Because we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. And so these talents that are coming up now that were not before not seen as very critical have now become critical. We can't do without them. Coders, for example, you want to create something new. And so companies need to think about, can I focus, or should I focus on training specific people on a particular skill, because for my organization, it's important. Lastly, I would say they still need to look at their strategy. So an organization cannot lose focus of their strategy now that we are in a pandemic. You still need to meet your goals. You have shareholders who are expecting that you will still meet your goals. And much as we're saying we're in a crisis, or we are highly disrupted, the bottom line still needs to be met. And so you cannot lose sight of what do people require to deliver on their specific deliverables. And so if you had planned for a training that was supposed to happen in August, when the pandemic began, you needed to go back to what were your KPIs for the year as a learning organization or as a learning and development department, and say, and if the facilitator or the company coming in to deliver the program is able to translate now their information into digital information, are they able to hold that training through the various platforms that you have in your organization? If not, then you need to look at an alternative. If yes, then does the cost of that training change? Because then you will not expect to have locations that you're taking people to. You will scrap out the issue of the cost of meals that you're having, and you will therefore only be able to do this training remotely, if at all it's going to continue. And so you really need to go back to what was the initial plan for the year? What were we delivering? What is the priority? What can we not do without? And those are the things that you focus on. I think it's quite important for organizations to do that because your deliverables must still be met. One thing I may not have mentioned that is absolutely key is change management. People react to change, and Martin, you remember we had this conversation last week. People need to understand what's going on with themselves. We are going through change. It is VUCA times, like it's unprecedented. We did not expect this to happen. And so things are changing very fast. Today you hear one thing, tomorrow you hear one thing. Today we are locked down, tomorrow we are being opened and then being locked down again. And so people react to change differently. Organizations react to change differently. And so it's very important to look at, with the budget that we have, how can we inform people about what's going on with them? How are people, remember in the beginning I said wellness, and how are people feeling? The change management aspect can come into that same space, because then you will be looking at what changes are we going through? What do you expect? People are worried about their jobs. Yeah. And when people are worried about their jobs, you have to let them know this is what you're going through. You have to, and by now maybe some organizations are at the point where people are a bit more comfortable because they know what the organization is doing. And when an organization is handling change management, they need to over-communicate. They need to let people know this is what is happening. I hear of some organizations where, because I'm on contract and I'm not, I don't have a permanent or pensionable contract with an organization, my last day of contract is tomorrow, for example. So today I am told the job is no more. I need to go home. And so you're affecting people's lives by not communicating to them. You need to communicate, which is a big part of change management. And so that budget, together with other departments within the organization, needs to be looked at keenly to determine how much of it will go into change management, both for leadership and for your employees. We also need to remember that much as we have leaders, they are people. Yeah, we may be focusing on all the other employees and your leaders are really struggling. They are stressed. They have deliverables. They have KPIs. Are those people doing okay? You probably need to look at, do they have a coach who can take them through this specific period? So going back and looking at what was the initial plan, prioritize, and then look at wellness, and then look at what else do we need for the moment? What's going on within our organization and around us? Because, and I can see we're people from different countries, what's going on around us? How do we manage the crisis that is going on now and be able to come out of it at a good space? Also look at the resources that you have. I find that, and Martin, I believe this will be my last point in this space, is I find that if you have an L&D team, in most organizations will consist of 1 or 2 people. However, you have subject matter experts within that organization. You have HR business partners in that organization. If you're going to roll out a program, use these people. You have people sitting in your organization who have skills to deliver programs, even online. Use these people, get volunteers, yeah? Assign people the duty of either holding forums where people can log in as an organization just to engage people. So you must keep people engaged so that they know where the organization is going, where we are at, how we are handling the situation, and what's going to happen to me next, because everybody's worried about me, my family, and whoever is dependent on me. And so a good way to make use of the fact that you have little or no budget now that we're in a pandemic is what resources can I use? What do I already have? Who do I already have in the organization who I can use to deliver important information, useful information, or learning information to either learn new skills or to deliver quick learning points while at the same time engaging people, because I can tell you people are different and everybody has something that they can help in terms of delivery. I think Martin, I've said quite a bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Now, something you've mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
learning department of 1 or 2. If you're in the audience and that sounds like you in the learning department and you're 1 or 2 or 3, I'd like to recommend a book by Emily Wood, Learning Department of 1 by ATD Press. That might actually help you figure out a few things. Now, quick question to the audience. Orders to press to play some little guesswork. We have now known face-to-face is not going to happen. Face-to-face trainings, conferences, summits, they'll all be online. But when do you predict that when this space might open for learning, face-to-face training or conferences? In a discussion, I told someone, don't expect any face-to-face before 2022. What do you think as the audience? When do you see us possibly going back to face-to-face trainings or conferences? You can type on that on chat when you think that might be happening. My guess, 2022. No? Okay. Let's see. Let's see what people are thinking. Okay. I see 2022, 2021. Okay. Mid 2021. Towards ending of 2021. Okay. Mid 2021. Okay. Face-to-face might not happen. 2022 will have formed a habit of online. So I think a nice thinking there that we have gotten so much used to online conferences, online learning, and nobody wants even to go for a face-to-face. Okay, it's a mix. 2022. Okay, some more guesses. I think what Q3 2021. So what we are all in agreement, face-to-face and the live in-person conferences are not happening very soon, right? Okay. Helen, see you, but then how long will it take to contain the fears of people for them to feel secure that they would want to go to Dubai or to any other country for a conference? Okay. Now, so, one question I'd like to answer that was asked in the audience about how do you evaluate training? Now, we've all been to a training session, and at the end of the training session, we receive a form, whether we were happy with the training, we were happy with the trainer, we liked the food, we liked the place. That's the lowest level of evaluation, which is called reaction or satisfaction or planned action. The second level is learning. And at this level, we are looking at what did actually the learners learn. And this is where sometimes we have assessments for any course that people are taking. The third level is evaluating how people are applying what they learned. So if someone learned how to do data analytics, they went for a course on data analytics. So after 3 months, are they actually doing data analytics, or they just learned and that knowledge is with them? Even if they passed the examination, that they can actually do data analytics, but are they applying it? The third level is on the business impact. What is that learning actually impact? How is that learning impacting the business? And the highest level is the ROI. And then this is which you look at the cost of the program and the benefits to the business. Now, there are over 10 ways, 10 methods of evaluating learning. What I was just sharing is Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation. You can learn a little bit more about on it. It's got a whole website. So I hope that answers that. I'm seeing someone asking, the biggest challenge is evaluating how employees are performing post the training. That's the easiest to evaluate. Who is in charge of the evaluation? Their supervisors. the supervisor should be able to see, are they actually applying what they learned? Has there been any change in how they're doing what they do? Because learning is supposed to close a performance gap. So are they seeing any notice? And some of this evaluation, like evaluation level 4, business impact, is done 6 months after. Training consultants, or where people go for external training, that's a little bit difficult to follow because the training firms made its money. They have no value in coming to evaluate unless they invoice you for the evaluation. So again, as internal organizations, we can set in place to measure this and not just depend on an outside for measuring. And measuring learning is a whole area of discussion on its own. I hope soon maybe we'll be able to discuss about that. There was something about Catherine. I know you're with us, and I think I'd like to invite you on this question as a performance consultant. Catherine, can you hear me? I'd like to unmute you, and then you can help us respond to this question. Okay, Catherine?
I can hear you.
Okay, so there's this question on, there was something about supervising, the discussion that one of the most affected people by this COVID situation is HR, who like seeing people who they are managing to see what they are doing and what they are not doing. So the question is, with working at home, work being done at home, how are these people now going to be supervised?
Okay. First, good morning, everyone. Supervision of work now also has changed in terms of now, because most people, as you have said, or as the question had said, that most people liked, or some HR people liked management by walking around and actually seeing people there. So now, this aspect of supervision changes from just seeing people, but to actually the tasks that have been assigned. So work becomes broken down to several tasks in a day, and then you supervise people in terms of how the deliverables against those tasks that have been assigned. So that's the way things are changing. It's not a matter of supervising that knowing somebody is there, that somebody has showed up, that they're at their desks, but it's more of deliverables going forward, because now you're working remotely, meaning everything that you're doing, like for today, you'll find you have certain tasks. So are you achieving the deliverables? And as you're achieving them, is it quality over quantity? So that's how also supervisory is changing. Is you're looking at, are they delivering quality, not just achieving the tasks at the end of the day, that this is what you're supposed to do and you deliver. No, it has to be quality, not quantity at the end of the day. So I think that's what people or the supervisors have to now change their minds in terms of how they'll supervise. Back to you, Martin.
Okay, thank you. So just to paraphrase what Catherine has just said is, in this time, it's not about how long you sit in your desk, it's what do you actually produce, the quality of what you produce in what time. So I'd like to recommend our April, early May session on managing remote employees. That might be able to answer some more questions. We have sent an email with all the recordings. You can refer to that. Those, I think we had Emmanuel and Emmanuel Michaels talking about that, managing remote employees. So that might also be able to do that. So Sia, you could add on something into this?
Yes, and I like the way the question was asked is, how is HR, HR likes to see what people are doing. I think the role of HR right now would be to support those managers, because managers will also have a hard time with that change, with being able to supervise remotely to make sure that people are doing what they're doing. So a key role for the HR teams would be to support those managers. What do they need? How are they doing? What challenges are they having with that supervision to be able to manage performance? Some organizations will have systems that can do this. Depending on the work that is being done, you have productivity systems that you're able to check remotely, and others will not. So a key role for HR is to be able to support the managers, support the leaders and the supervisors to make sure that they are okay. They know what they're doing, they know what's expected of them, and they know how to manage people who are working remotely.
And I think this discussion just brought back an image that I think was doing some rounds in the social media some time back. I think late last year, a picture of an employee digging a tunnel, and you have managers sitting looking and was to see whether they are doing that employee is actually digging the hole or the pit. So right now, if that employee has to dig the pit remotely, what will every other manager be doing now? Because there's nobody to look at. Yeah. The question is, they need to just hear that the hole was dug, so no looking. Give an assignment, give a task, give deliverables. That was what is the most important thing. But again, I'd like to recommend watch that session on performance management. I think either day 1 or day 2. That will give more insight. So we have a few more minutes. I would like to encourage some questions on chat. I think we have done some quite questions. Okay, there's a question. How are you going to ensure that employee is not employed by another organization, since now it seems possible when working from home? Gig economy. Yeah, gig economy. Can we hold back the gig economy? Syria.
I don't think we can. We can no longer hold back the gig economy. What we thought was something that was the future of work. The future of work is here. And so the HR teams or your recruitment teams really need to be looking at what does that mean for the organizations. Because if I have work that I would do, if I go to the office the entire day, that I can do in half a day and I've delivered on my expectations, I am looking for money any other way. And so I am going to do any other work that I can to bring in money for my family. And so we can no longer hold back the gig economy. We just need to look at what is the policy around people having more than one jobs. I can tell you, even as you watch CNN every day, you're finding people being so creative. You sit in a remote country and you're working for a very large organization in a completely different continent. And so it's no longer a thing, that we're saying will come. It is here and we can't hold it back. And so for the HR teams, for the learning teams, you need to sit with your stakeholders and have a discussion around what does that mean for this organization? What does that mean for the contracts that we have with people? What does that mean for what we are saying is redundancy? Can we either hire people on short-term basis, or can we rework the contracts to be able to accommodate people doing more than one jobs? It could even cost organizations less to say, okay, let's relook at your contract with us and see, are you going to continue full time, or do you want to adopt the gig platform, or do you want to adopt a gig way of working, in that you can now do more than one jobs? I mean, people were doing it. People had side hustles. It is now just called the gig economy. And, we can do it remotely, and we can do it with very large organizations. There are people who are working on their side hustle or their other job and earning more than their current salary. What maybe they don't have is a medical cover, a pension, which they have with their main organization, but they are actually making more money doing other things remotely at their own time, because everybody is now trying to be at home as much as possible. Thanks, Martin.
So I think we might have to relook at how we think about work, because if you're telling me I can only come in for a week and my pay is cut, I still have, what do I do with the rest of my time? I can't just sit home and do nothing. So there's another question here. How do we manage training process going forward in the way to rapidly respond to the speed of change in the business? So here is how we learn and how we quickly we're able to document learning.
Mhm.
I think training is not just us sending people or something. We can have, I think I had this discussion with someone about a few years, 3 to 4 years ago. Quick one. Uh, if your organization has about 100 people, just type 100. If they have 50, just arrange 50, 100, 150, 200, so that we can be able to respond to this question practically. So your organization has a range of employees, just type the number, approximate number, so that I just illustrate this. Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so 500, 160, 50, over 1,000. Okay, 250 plus. Now, there is what we say. If you're an organization and you have 1,000 people, one, you have 1,000 learners and 1,000 teachers. That this one are 3,000. So you have 3,000 people who know things that they can pass on the knowledge to others. But as an organization, are you using them? Right? Because as you said rightly, because the question was, business has to change at the speed of thought. Right? So if something is new comes up, a new process comes up today because of COVID, you have to have it learned by tomorrow morning by everybody so as to make the process flawless. I was in a pharmacy on Saturday, and I was looking at if in the pharmacy the process has changed. Also in organizations, they have changed. So, but then how do you quickly teach everyone? Now, we need to understand it is every person knows something that the other doesn't know. And learning is passing that information. This might be at the workplace or social learning. And where we are moving, we have to mix social learning with professional learning, because then the professional learning will be taken as social learning is happening. So again, how are you able to change to beat to match with the speed of change? Crowdsource learning. Yes, telling is not training, but if you have people who know and they can quickly teach others, then you'll be at a better place in terms of catching up with it or keeping up with the change. New change every day. So like here in Kenya, Nairobi is open for the next 21 days. We don't know after 21 days if it is closed or open. But then, so we're expecting a change in 21 days. But then in the organization, how do you communicate change? How do you train for change fast? And everything is changing very fast. So that's how if you use the people, the subject matter experts you have in the organization, and they know how to create learning, that's a perfect thing. The second thing is you have all those trainings that have been created for face-to-face learning, or what we call instructor-led learning, training. Then the next best thing is have a team internally that will help you convert all those to virtual instructor-led trainings or self-paced trainings, which you can avail on your learning management system in the organization and encourage employees to learn from where they are. And that's one of the ways to cut down your budget, to manage your budget in this crisis time. Yes, one training might cost you 100,000 shillings or $1,000, but if you look at it is taken by the entire organization, cost per person makes a lot of sense. And then there was another question about audit. Siri, if I can invite you on this, so I don't talk too much. There was a question on, is this the best time to carry a skills audit for an organization?
I would say it's not a bad time, yeah, much as there's a lot going on. Some organizations would have a database where they have people easily updating their skills. Remember, I mentioned that you find people have skills that you need during this pandemic that you may have not known you have those skills within the organization. So yes, it is a good time to do that, because then you know who has what skills. What skill database do we have within the organization that we can make use of either now or in the future? You never know when you might need a certain skill. Like I mentioned, the illustrators, you never know, what skill somebody has that we can use during this time. And you aptly said that if you have 3,000 people, you have 3,000 people with skills that you may not know they have. You could have somebody who is trained in homeschooling, and you use that person to help employees within your organization manage their kids at home. So it's a very good time, I would say, to have a skills audit done. It's very important.
And just the other thing around the skills audit, would it be useful to do a skills audit if you have no competency framework as an organization?
I believe doing a skills audit would be part of your maybe building your competency framework. Because if you don't have a competency framework in your organization, then there's a big miss. You don't know what competencies are required for your organization, your industry, and maybe even your SME. And so getting someone in who is compliant with or a specialist in preparing or coming up with a competency framework is important, because that then feeds, the skills audit would feed into your competency framework. You would know who needs what level of development, or you would know where to start as a benchmark. So the two would go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So apologies, our sincere apologies. We are 3 minutes past our 1 hour. So as we wind up, we'd like to thank everyone who's about the 80 HR professionals from right across the continent who have joined us for this session. We'd like to thank you. We value you giving us your time to learn with us. And we'd like to thank you. So as we finish up, I have put my email address there. Also, I'd like to send another email address. If you have any questions, we would like you to send them to us and we'll be able to respond to them. But before we wind up, I'd like to ask you to rate this session on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. What is your rating for this session? Samuel, we are not letting Syria go anywhere. You stay here.
Thank you, Samuel.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So then, just as we conclude, just to share something we had shared previously on a PowerPoint, how we are trying to help organizations. Let me just hold on. So we are trying to help organizations with learning. If you have sessions that you'd like to create virtual instructional sessions for, we would like to welcome you. You can reach out to us on mail. We can help your team. Sorry about that. We can help your team learn how to convert virtual instructor-led trainings to virtual instructor-led trainings. So we'd like to thank every one of you for this session. Join us next week for interesting sessions. Next week on 14th, we have how to use emotions on performance management, and we have in a HR's day. So a day at work of the HR. So we'll be looking at the trials and the tribulations of HR. So we'd like to thank everyone for this session. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and see you next week. We will be sending the recordings of this session and yesterday's session, at least by the end of the day today. Thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.